Hello, this is Harold S. Reed Jr. and welcome to another episode of the Ice Talks, where we implement change every day. Hey, how you doing? Harold S. Reed Jr. here, also known as HRJR, your motivational coach. If you don't know what motivation means, motive plus action equals results, and results equals success. Welcome back to another episode of the Ice Talks. As promised, I'm going to make these, and I do this from time to time. I know I promise I'm going to keep you going with current content, but you got to understand, this is right now, this podcast is a one-man show, and I like it like that. I don't need a staff, I don't need a team, but I need to take time to, experience life and live life and study life and, research the field and learn things, experience things so I can share things for you and with you. All right. So what I want to talk to you about today, however, is how old money becomes or became old money. And this originally started out as a message primarily to black people. But of course, I want this to be a message that anyone and everyone can learn from, because black people aren't the only poor people in this country, if not the world. All right. So I want to talk about first where this also came from is several conversations I've been having over the past few days regarding Nike taking on Colin Kaepernick as the face for their 30th anniversary for the Just Do It marketing campaign. And my argument not so much my argument, but my personal position has been, instead of buying Nike clothing, Nike gear, Nike equipment to support the cause, I say buy Nike stock, right? Because as opposed to just, and this is also in the face of people burning, destroying, cutting up, what have you, tearing up their own property, which they already bought. So Nike already has their money, but as opposed to supporting the cause that way, support the cause in such a way where you're showing support for the cause, but you're also doing something for yourself. So my position has been, instead of buying Nike gear, buy Nike stock, right? Now, personally, what I did so that I, literally put my money where my mouth is, I sold some shares in another company that I made a little money off of, having invested in, and I used those shares to buy 5 shares of Nike stock. Now, the arguments came from a couple people, and their arguments were, one person said, Nike stock is too expensive. Let me deal with that. Let's just, because, I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time, so let me just deal with that. Nike stock is going for $80 a share, so you'd be better off buying some cheaper stock. And why? How would I be better off buying cheaper stock? You know what? There might be something to that, because the money that I made from, in order to buy the Nike stock was from cheaper stock that I bought and built up. Now imagine if I'd have left that money alone, if I'd have left those shares alone for a few more years. But guess what? I'm going to buy some more of that stock too, right? But I'm also going to buy Nike stock. Why? Because I'm not looking to cash out my Nike stock in a couple months. I'm not even looking to cash out my Nike stock at all. In a perfect world, I want that Nike stock to be for my grandkids. So my children won't even get to see the benefits of that stock. I want that stock to go to my grandkids, right? And considering my youngest is 9 and my oldest is not likely to have children, I don't know, we could pray, okay? But I don't see myself being a grandfather anytime soon. And even then, my grandkids won't be able to take advantage of that money until they're grown. So imagine, I'm talking about another 25, 30 years from now, maybe, right? So, even, yeah, roughly, ballpark figure, so, yeah, that money's going to sit there for a while. But in any case, before I go too far off on that tangent, I want to talk about how people should, now, again, I said this originally came from a message that I normally share with black people. So for the white people or non-black people listening to this, if you could find some value in this too, please do so. But this particular point is for my people, in that we have to, and don't be, and for my brothers and sisters, don't be sitting up being mad talking about I'm putting out dirty laundry. I'm just saying what has to be said. Don't be ashamed, because it has to be said. And what has to be said is we as a people need to learn ownership more so than consumerism. Oh, we got consumerism down pat. We the best consumers on the planet. Don't nobody consume better than black people, right? Black spending power is in the trillions of dollars, 1.5 to $3 trillion annually. Oh, black people can spend some money. What do we own? Now, having said that, because I'm not going to sit here and beat up my people, I'll take that same challenge to everybody, regardless of your ethnicity, right? Because we can all spend some money, but what do you own? When you think about it, unless all you're paying for on your mortgage is taxes, you don't own your house. The bank does. If you're paying a mortgage, you don't own your house, even though you're considered a homeowner because you're financing that house. If you're paying a car note, you don't own a car. The bank does. So what do we really own? We own the clothes on our back. We own, hell, a lot of people don't even own their cell phones because they bought them on a payment plan. How many people you know, tell the truth, how many people you know walked into the Sprint store or the AT&T store or the T-Mobile store, whatever store, and bought $1,000 iPhone 10 with $1,000, bam, right then and there. Don't worry, I'll wait, as Cat Williams would say, right? So what do we really own? So this is also where the buy stock conversation comes from. This is where the buy stock conversation comes from, because I own that stock. I own shares in Nike. I own shares in JP Morgan. I own shares in Facebook. And they're not a lot of shares, but damn it, I own the ones I got. Okay? And I'm going to get more. All right? And I own shares in a few other companies as well. All right? I own those. I bought them. I own them. And I'm going to continue to buy them, and I'm going to continue to own them. And I ain't talking about owning a damn company, but if I could own a legitimate piece of that company and make money off of that piece of that company, or those companies, pieces of those companies, damn it, that's what I'm going to do. See, because another conversation that I got into when I mentioned this before was someone was telling me that the Nike stocks were too expensive at $80. At $80, Nike stock is too expensive. Now, let's be clear. I'm not balling out of control. I am not yet a millionaire, right? But when it comes to priorities, I have to take a moment of pause and think about what's important. What can I do? And this is what I urge you to do. Whether it's the $80 that Nike shares cost now, or whatever the case may be, whatever the dollar amount may be, ask yourself, what can you do with that dollar amount? So when it came to the $80, which, tell you the honest to God truth, when I paid for my Nike stock, it was below $80. It was like 79 and change. So if it's at 80 now, then guess what? Nike is already making me money in a matter of days. Granted, it's just a little bit, little drips and drabs, but over the course of time, that adds up. That's what I'm talking about. So when I get into this debate with this other character, I'm saying to him, basically, you're thinking small while I'm building small. See, his thoughts are, I should buy a whole lot of cheap stock that's volatile. That's the word he used, that's volatile. And I totally believe in the no risk, no reward scenario. But at the same time, if I have the opportunity to get in on something that has already proven itself and obviously ain't going nowhere in terms of dissolving for quite some time to come, and I got a window to jump in on that, and it's affordable to me, $80 is affordable to me. Why? Because guess what? I didn't really use much of my own money to do it. I just sold something here and bought something there, right? And that is these are the building blocks of the crux of what I'm about to get into next, which is the title of this podcast, this particular podcast, How Old Money Becomes Old Money. All right? So what I want you to understand is that what I'm ultimately talking about is legacy building and creating generational wealth. Now, there was a point in time where only a certain group of people could build legacies and create generational wealth. This is why there is such a massive wealth gap in the United States today, right? So we know which group is which. Okay? Now, that being said, let's examine how that group was able to create generational wealth and thus build legacies. Now, from my personal research, which consists of what I call CCB, contacts, conversations, and books. I've spoken with people of wealth. I've spoken to, not to offend anybody, white people of wealth. All right. So there's the contacts and the conversations, and then there are books that I have read. One of which I strongly recommend you read, and I'm about. As a matter of fact, I think I have it on my desk. But yep, I'm looking at it right now. But I'm probably gonna have to go to the bookstore and get a new one because this one is worn out. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is one of the most phenomenal books ever. Let me reach over here and grab this because if I'm not mistaken, this book was published in the Jesus, my book is torn. I got to get a new one. This book came out in the 1920s, 1930s. Oh man, this is a revised edition. It says 1960, but this book came out well in the early part of the 20th century. All right. So in any case, what these people did, right? Landowners, because that was the true determination of wealth back in the early days of this country. All right. If you owned land, you were wealthy, or you were well on the verge of becoming wealthy. If you own land and you own slaves to work that land, please don't nobody get offended. This is just a little history. Don't be afraid or ashamed of history. It is what it is, right? If you own land and you own slaves to work that land, and you got those slaves to produce off of that land, all right, you were able to sell what the slaves produced in the marketplace. You made money. Okay? And that is where that is how wealth began. Okay? Now, how did wealth become generational wealth? How did this old money become old money? Because old money isn't born old money, just like old people aren't born old people. All right? There's no such thing as the Benjamin Button disease. Okay? So what happened was these people, these landowners, these slave owners, what have you, they insured their property. Okay? They took out insurance on their property. They took out insurance on their lives. All right? Then what they also did was they invested. Now, back then, they invested in slaves. They bought, because slaves weren't considered people back then. Slaves were considered property. Slaves were considered chattel, right? So they invested in the slave trade in buying and selling slaves, right? So you got buying and selling the people themselves who weren't considered people. Then you have the maximizing off of their labor. All right. So you yourself, the slave owner, the landowner, you're not doing anything, but the slave in the field is producing bales of cotton, dozens and dozens of bales of cotton. And if you've got dozens and dozens of slaves, you've got hundreds of, so it builds up, right? So there's the return on the investment. All right. This is again history, so we get away, so people don't feel uncomfortable about the slave thing. All right. After slaves came machinery and weaponry and business and steel and all those kind of things and agriculture. Okay, so there are hundreds of different things for people to invest in, right? So first they insure, and then they invest, or along with insuring and getting insurance, they invested. So we have insurance and investing. All right. Then what they do is they teach their children. People who have generational wealth create generational wealth by educating their children to be stewards of the money that they are going to get from their insurance, which leads me to my next point, inheritance. All right. So first the people insure themselves, they invest in themselves, or they invest in things that are going to bring them money, more money, right? And then they educate their children how to handle the money that they're going to get. And then they leave that money to their children, so those children inherit money. So you have insurance, investing, education, and inheritance. These are the elements of legacy building and creating generational wealth. Now, again, just how I used the slave example, where you had, one slave who could pick a dozen or dozens of bales of cotton during the course of a day, right? If you've got dozens of slaves, your output increases as well. So I'm going to flip that scenario to say you have, say, 3 children. I have 2 boys. Let's say you have 3 children. Let's say you have 4 children. Let's say you have 5 children. Back in the day, people had families of 5, 6, 7 kids because they weren't really big on birth control. Okay. So however many children you have, you're teaching these various principles, okay, to your children, right? You're teaching them to insure themselves, insure their lives, insure their property. Okay. Then you're going to teach them how to go about investing in whatever they believe is best to invest in, whether it's stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever the case may be, startups, angel investing, Shark Tank type of stuff, anything, whatever, right? But they're going to invest. You got to plant them seeds. You got to put that money somewhere with the expectation for it to grow and bring back a return on that investment. So you have you have insuring and investing, and again, educating, because you're going to teach your children about the first 2. All right. You're going to educate your children about insurance. You're going to educate your children about investing. Okay. And by educating your children about insuring and investing, you are also educating your children on how they're going to educate their children. So that's where the generation thing starts to come into play, right? Then at some point in time, after you've lived all the living you're going to live, you're going to die. But if you've done most of the stuff right, okay, you've insured, you've invested, you've left a will, your children will inherit what you leave for them. And then the onus falls upon them to continue to insure, to continue to invest, to continue to educate their children so that their children can educate their own children, right? So now you're gone, your children are here educating your grandchildren. Then your children are going to pass away, all right? Your grandchildren will be the adults. Your grandchildren will be the ones who now know how to insure, how to invest, how to educate their children, your great-grandchildren, okay? And then your great-grandchildren will inherit what was left behind by your grandchildren, by your children, and by you. It's 3 generations of wealth building, all right? And from what you started, you're leaving a legacy behind, okay? But the problem most people have today is they don't want to leave behind anything. There's a documentary I watched a couple years ago, I believe it was called Black Friday. And the whole documentary started out with the question being asked, when you die, which would you rather leave behind, bills or benefits? Think about that, right? So a lot of people would, have it in their mind, I'm going to get just enough insurance to bury me, because I'm not going to sit up here and leave behind all this crazy amount of money for everybody to be partying with, and I'm dead. And this is why people stay broke. This is exactly why people stay broke, because that mindset, I'm not leaving behind anything for my kids. I'm not leaving anything behind for them. Why? Because nobody left anything behind for that person. And when you that is the opposite of legacy building. That is creating generational poverty. And that cycle is strong. That cycle is far too deeply embedded in a great many people, not just black people, but a great many people, because there's a lot more poor white people running around here. There's a lot more poor white people on welfare than there are black people on welfare. All right. And I don't want to keep turning this to a black and white thing, so I don't want people to get uncomfortable. But let's talk about life the way it is. Let's talk about life the way it is. You guys know I'm not the happy, shiny, motivational speaker. Let's talk about life the way it is. Okay? But we cannot change this cycle until we change the cycle. And these are the keys to changing the cycle. Whatever you can do, whatever kind of insurance you can get, and I'm not talking about insurance for your car per se, okay? Because you can't leave behind car insurance, but you can leave behind life insurance. You can make sure that if something happens to your property, you get paid back the value of your property. Okay? All right? So we want to insure ourselves. We want to insure our property. Whatever kind of insurance you can get, just get it. It's a start. Okay? It's a start. And then learn how to invest. All right? I have an investment account with Capital One Investing. I believe within the next few weeks or months, it's going to turn into E-Trade. But guess what? I can go online. I could do whatever research I want to do on whatever company I find myself interested in. Okay? And then, I just put money in the account and I buy the stocks that I want. All right? Whether they do well or they don't, I have nobody to blame or pat on the back but myself, because I do my own research. You got to do the work. You got to do the research. This is how you get smart. You do the work. All right? And learn how to invest. Okay? There are books for that. Remember what I said before. All right? CCB. Contacts, Conversations, and Books. You got to make contacts. You got to network. You got to get to know people. And in the process of getting to know people, you're going to have what? You're going to have conversations. Okay? But conversations basically exist in a realm where people are sharing opinions, views, and on occasion, facts. Okay? So you need your contacts, you need your conversations, but then you got to have books. Do the research, do the work, find out for yourself so that you can go back and say, okay, well, I read in such and such a book. I read in such and such a book. I'm going to drop an author's name, Lynette Kalfani Fox. That's a sister you people need to look up. Now, when I say you people, I mean everybody. You guys, you people, you everybody need to look up Lynette Kalfani Fox. I have a couple of her books that have helped me, with my money situation. She is a money coach and she knows her stuff. Okay, so again, we're talking about contacts, conversations, and books. We're talking about insuring, investing. All right, I was just talking about books, so we're talking about educating. And then you leave behind what you've invested. You leave behind your insurance. You leave that behind, right? And then guess what? Somewhere between the insurance and the investments, you hopefully have other assets. All right? You hopefully have other assets. Because when I say invest, people hear the word invest and they think of stocks and bonds. You could also invest in real estate. Because guess what? Land ain't going nowhere. Whether it's a flat piece of land with nothing on it, or, you got commercial property, residential property. I listen, everybody knows I do Uber on the side. All right. I had a guy in my car last night who was telling me about, he's visiting from LA because one of his friends plays for the Giants. So he was at the game, watching the game. But, so when he left his boy from the Giants apartment in Fort Lee, New Jersey, I'm taking him back into the city where he's staying at another friend's house in Soho, who does industrial real estate, where he's making 1% off of the deals that he makes. But the deals that he makes are minimum $500,000 deals, $500,000 deals. He's making 1% of $500,000. All right. That adds up. That adds up. Listen, let me break out the calculator because I don't want to give you wrong numbers, but let's see. $500,000 times 1%, that's $5,000. And if he's got deals going on, and that's 1%, 2%, 3%, or points on the package, if you will, for those who know what that life is about. All right? If he's making $5,000 deals, shoot, there are people wishing they can get $5,000 in a week. He's making $5,000. He's getting $5,000 a deal. You got 10, 15, 20 deals lined up for the course of a month or so. Every month or so, that's adding up. See? We got to know how things compound. We got to learn how things overlap and loop and recreate and cycle and recycle themselves. All right? This is how generational wealth and legacy building is done, right? And think about what I just told you in that story. And I'm going to begin to wrap this up. But think about what I just told you in this story. And the guy who was my passenger, all right, he runs a bar in Los Angeles. He runs a bar, or he owns a bar in Los Angeles. So what is he doing all the time? He's making contacts. And with those contacts, he's having conversations. So what did his contacts do? One contact got him to New Jersey to watch a professional football game, right? And he was probably, I don't know if he was in the box or nothing because his friend was a player, not an owner. But still, he probably had great seats, right? Then he's going to go back and party with my man at his place for a little bit. And then he's going to take an Uber. All right, because he ain't stupid. He ain't got to spend no money on no damn limo. You just, $35 for an Uber ride into the city. Okay, so Uber into the city at a Soho apartment where his other friend who is doing multi-million-dollar deals. I said, mind you, minimum deal is $500,000. Minimum deal. Because we're talking industrial real estate, they're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in deals. So, all right, $500,000 minimum deal, all right, $5 million, 1% of a $5 million deal, 1% of a $10 million deal. So this dude is sitting on top of a lot of money right now, all right? Now, I don't know what his whole personal situation is. I just know what I picked up in the conversation that I had with the gentleman who was in my backseat. And you know what? He could have been lying. But guess what? There are people out there who are living that life. There are people out there who are doing the things that I am telling you in this podcast to do. And they are reaping the benefits. This stuff is tried, true, and proven. Read. Develop. Get you some contacts. Have some conversations with those contacts. Get you some books. Get Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Oh man, I got a whole. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. I got some rereading to do as far as I'm concerned. It's a whole new level. It's a whole new game. Right now, I'm about to turn 50 in a couple years, and I got about another 50 years of living and making money to do. So, I don't know about you, but I'm gonna get on my read right now. Now, listen, I'm gonna wrap this up. I wish you guys nothing but the best, and we're gonna keep this thing moving. Again, we're still looking to build up the follower base. So, when you hear this on Spreaker.com, or whatever platform you do hear it on, please do visit me at Spreaker.com and follow me at Spreaker.com, because the ultimate goal is to get this podcast distributed on iHeartRadio. So like, share, and encourage. Please like this please like this podcast, and please share this podcast with your friends, because these are valuable messages that I want to make sure as many people as possible get, receive, and benefit from. This is Harold S. Reed Jr. wishing you nothing but the best. All right? Take care of yourselves, and I'll see me on the next podcast. Peace. Thank you for listening to the Ice Talks, where we implement change.